Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Thank You Half Hour. I'm your host, Tom Christopher Warren, and today I am over the moon to have someone joining me today who I've known of for a long time. We've met peripherally, and I'm dying to hear her stories. She's not only a Tony nominee, she's not only a Tony nominee for her Broadway debut, because that happens all the time, not only a Tony nominee for a Broadway debut, but in that show, she debuted a song that would become, in combination with her voice, a part of the musical theater ether, a part of the musical theater zeitgeist, and a part of our history. The show is Company. The role is Marta. The song is Another 100 People. And of course, my guest is the one and only Pamela Meyers. Pamela, thank you for being
Hey,
here.
Tom.
Hi,
Hi.
how are you? How are you?
Hi. Well, I'm fine. I'm here in Ohio,
I
like
know.
you are.
Cincinnati,
and, It's so strange, isn't it? All the Broadway talk we do, and
I
we're
know.
both here in Ohio.
I know. And we're connected via, all our social medias and our Zooms and our, we can get anywhere we need to get, hop on a plane.
I
Pamela and
Great.
I met, sort of officially met for the first time because I was directing, if you remember, a production of Little Shop at CCM, Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music, where Pamela is an alum. And we'll get to that later. And Pamela was gracious enough to come and join us and do a little guest spot for me. But do you remember, and I don't know why you would, we met actually in 2001. Do you know where?
At school, you mean?
No. I don't.
CCM?
No, I don't remember what I had for breakfast. But this I remember. In 2001, you were doing Gypsy at the Rep in St. Louis.
Oh my gosh! Yes.
Right? And I was doing a production of How to Succeed at Stages, and I guess the farm boys and the businessmen knew each other, and we had a communal cast party between the two of us. And we're enjoying each other. We're enjoying the party. And at one point, I hear acoustically the voice of my formative years listening to cast albums singing Another 100 People. And there was Pam Meyers in the room singing Another 100 People. And it was like, worlds colliding. Look at that picture. Come on. That's you as Rose. That was a fabulous production.
I'm telling you.
That was fabulous.
You know what was interesting about that production, since I did 3 different productions of Gypsy, really.
Wow.
But just 3 different places, but the same production, 2 productions. That second one, though, Vicky Bussert directed.
Genius.
And Janet Watson choreographed, staged that one. And I just thought it was so insightful. They were women staging that. And the first time I had done it, I had essentially, learned it and everything. Scott Thompson directed that. And that was a wonderful production, too, in Austin. But that production that Vicky and Janet staged, it just had something about some insight of 2 women, their point of view about it. And gosh, I thought that was a great production. I really did enjoy doing it. It's really satisfying to do Gypsy. It has... I've been talking about it lately with some other people because, when you're a music theater woman and, you have all these mountains that you want to climb as a performer, and then you get to do them.
Yeah.
And it's just mind blowing. And then, like, somebody will ask me, would you like to do Gypsy again? No, I do not want to do Gypsy again.
It's a bear.
I have to be hospitalized.
It's a monster.
Gypsy grandma.
Oh,
I mean, it's just crazy. That's what I feel about Marta. Marta's grandma.
Did you see the revival? Did you see this most recent Marianne Elliott revival?
I did. I saw it twice. And I went to opening. So did Donna McKechnie and Barbara Berry. We went to the opening in New York, and it was so unusual for us. And we were wearing masks, of course, because that was December of 21.
21, yeah.
And Stephen had just died, and like 2 weeks before that, it was, and my dear friend Harvey Evans was in the hospital right then, and it was just quite an eventful evening. But it was when I heard the music start, you just go,
yeah.
And it's so glorious with an orchestra, to hear those Sondheim scores
Ugh,
played by the best musicians in the world, musicians. And I don't know, it was weird, I have to say.
yep.
It wasn't, I just thought it was like apples and oranges, frankly.
Right.
I mean, honestly, I had a hard time comparing them because, whoops, outside, can you hear
Company. Yeah.
the street outside in Cincinnati? um, I mean, to have your part played by a man, and it's just totally with different lyrics and different harmonies and all of it. It was hard to compare it. I mean, I love the songs. I just love everything about it. I could have burst into tears at any second, which I did. And
Yeah. The
I
lens.
really enjoyed it
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. It'll never be the original,
Right.
as far as I'm concerned. That, curtains, please. I mean, that's just Dean Jones, too. I mean, we were so taken with Dean Jones.
Dean Jones, the
part.
original
I don't know
Bobby.
if
Yeah.
any of us will ever be able to hear anybody else sing Being Alive and
Right.
without just getting all choked up. Donna feels the same way, and all of us. Terry is, we've lost half of our cast because I was the youngest one.
Were you?
And so that's over 50 years ago, people. So I remember a lot of this stuff, though, like it was yesterday.
Isn't it remarkable
And,
how the new lens allows something that is over 50 years old to still remain, to find the components that are still relevant, right? The inability to commit, or Peter Pan syndrome, or, all of those themes that ran through
All
the
of it.
show. Some of it
Yeah.
is a love letter to New York of the 70s. Some of it is a love letter to the 70s. And then so much of it is still absolutely prescient today. And that's what I found remarkable.
That's what's so interesting about it, too. And if you do it, I directed it at Xavier University here in Cincinnati in 2019 as a period piece.
Yeah. Yeah.
From the 70s. Like a charm.
Sure.
I mean, and those students, of course, had never, ever heard of busy signal. We talked about a lot of things, though, that we never talked about. And they never even thought to talk about when we were doing it then.
Of course.
All these things, that the war that was going on, the Vietnam War, and how that affected a lot of people. And I'll tell you right now, people came to see that show who were on their way to war, Vietnam.
Wow.
And back. And over the years, so many people have said that to me. I saw that show. I could go to one Broadway show, and of course they didn't know what it was, and it was so wild and strange because it was that way with everybody. I mean, we had some reviews that just blew people's minds, and I was saying "son of a bitch" on stage in 1970.
And talking about buttholes.
Talking about
yeah, this
exactly all these things. I was from Ohio. I was green as grass. Oh my heavens! My parents came to opening night and they were in shock.
I know you
stayed
did
in shock for years about company.
Yeah, I know that you did Oklahoma at CCM. You went in and guested there, and I feel like you're talking about those who are coming over and seeing company right before going to Vietnam. Very similar to those who were about to serve in World War II, and we're seeing Oklahoma, and we're seeing this slice of American life. With company, you're seeing a slice of New York life for a single person, for a coupled person, for this community of sort of upper middle class professionals in New York City at that moment in history, and it's a time capsule, really, if you treat it like a period
time
piece.
capsule, and you don't realize it, of course, until you're much older.
Yeah, sure.
And we talked about birth control, people, having sex at that age and doing those things then, because people smoking cigarettes like furnaces. I mean, it was just a lot of things, and you don't realize it until many years later. And
that's the genius of Sondheim, though, right? He's writing about things that weren't being written about, and there will never be anyone like him.
Mr. S, I just, when I first came to New York too, I got cast right away. And I was actually at one point living in a rental right down the street from him on East 49th Street in that townhouse. And I would take the crosstown bus to the theater, and it went right up our block, past down our block, 49th. And I would wait outside, the over there was a bus stop right there in that corner. And one day I remember, I don't know what I was doing. I was from Ohio. I was very naive. I went up and knocked on the door and just dropped in. Hi. Well, I don't know if he was home or if he was just upstairs. He was writing or what he was doing. But Luis answered the phone, which was his gentleman that was like the housekeeper person. It took care of him.
Okay.
And he's even, I remember him. He was just such a wonderful person. He did that for years, and he's in his books and everything. And he was so gentlemanly, and he offered me a piece of cake and all these things. And finally, I guess I got out of there. Maybe I had a streak of coming to and realizing, wait a minute, this is so unusual. We do this in my neighborhood in Cleves, Ohio, but
sure.
I don't know. And Katharine Hepburn, of course, was still living then.
Yep.
Next door. Oh my gosh. So everybody has their own unique perspective on meeting Stephen Sondheim and then experiencing him. And then over the years, all the notes, like I say, that, everyone says, oh, he wrote me all these notes and letters. Well, he did. He's the most mannerly person ever. It was a message for all of us. And Hal Prince was the same way, wrote notes. And I picked up that habit of their note cards. And I'm just looking down here, by the way. I'm jumping around in things. But,
I love it.
When I go to New York, I'm going to go visit New York in a few weeks. And I want to give my shoes that I wore in company.
Are you going to give them to the museum?
Tom, yes, I do. I want to give them to the museum.
Museum of Broadway.
Because I wore them for about, a month, I guess. And they were cut right before we opened. And they were, of course, custom made and everything. They're just amazing. But these were extreme for those days. And, it was, they weren't real easy to move around in, but we had so many things and our costumes changed because Dee Ryan, who was the costume designer, was actually a personal friend of Hal and Stephen and a lot of the people. And she was, let me tell you, this fashion icon from Bazaar magazine. She was one of the editors.
Oh, wow.
Did you know this about her?
No.
I mean, she was like Diana Vreeland. I mean, she was really amazing.
Right.
Smoked gaulois all the time. She just made up this design, this really avant wardrobe for everybody. But she really wasn't a designer, and she didn't know how to really make costumes. And so a lot of it got replaced. But especially since we were really officially only wearing one costume in the show.
Right.
We had a couple of extra scenes at the end of the show when we were in Boston. They were trying to figure out an ending. So we had a couple other things to wear. But officially, we were all just wearing one costume. So they had to be really efficient and good and say in an instant what our characters were.
Right.
And I'll just never forget all of that stuff. And one really funny thing was when we had the costume parade at Barbara Matera's.
Yes.
I've been building the costumes. Yep. And that was a very festive thing. So they were drinking champagne or something, and we'd come in and model our costumes, and I had those shoes on, and the only thing I ended up keeping was the actual hand. It was a painted vest. It was leather, It had flames on it, purple, red, silver, and all this stuff. That was the only thing that I was left with. But they started drinking champagne, and then people started saying their comments about the costumes. And we'll never forget it because, of course, it was my first experience. I don't know. Is this how they do things on
That's
Broadway?
amazing.
Every experience I had for company was, is this how they do it? And when another 100 people was cut, is this how they do it? I mean, I was like, ooh. And
How long was it cut
it
for?
was so dramatic and so many levels for people. I mean, especially Mr. S. He was so upset that they had cut another 100 people.
How
But
long was it out of the show?
Long story, it was only out one performance. Long story short, they rearranged the entire show in 24 hours. Seriously. Because I have never, that was one thing you will never understand how they are such geniuses, because it was in the second act, it was put in the first act, rearranged completely in a different scene. Everything was so changed. And so I don't know, they must have been up all night.
Incredible.
So I have to say. And then Donna's dance went in, and that was staggering.
Oh.
Her dance. Oh my word. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. I mean, it was the first dance before chorus line of the same type. But I have to say that it blew everybody's mind.
Well, that kind of storytelling told through dance. We hadn't seen a lot of that other than, group dance in West Side Story, the Jerry Robbins canon. But her alone on that stage telling that story, and we'd see it again in chorus line, just incomparable.
I'm telling you, we watched it. I watched it from the wing so many times, because you just, when she came down those steps, it just went like this. She, of course, you know what a dancer I am.
Same. Did you get to see her play Joanne in Nyack?
I never saw her play Joanne, no.
Yep, Norm Lewis was in it. Our friend Sarah Gettelfinger, that's why we went. We went to see Sarah play April.
Sarah.
I do too. She was my husband's college roommate, or one of them. And it was beautiful production. And then I saw the revival with Boyd Gaines, and then of course this revival. It's just it keeps coming up in the ether because it still remains relevant, right? Now tell me about you're an interpreter of Sondheim's work between Company and the revival of Into the Woods. What was that revival like for you?
The revival?
Yeah.
Well,
you were fabulous.
I was thrilled to be in it. Took me so by surprise, because actually I was doing Gypsy when they were casting that. And I was playing here in Cincinnati, and they wanted me to fly up there and audition. And I said, I can't do that when I'm doing Gypsy. Seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, right. I just said, well, that's that. And so Gypsy closed, and I was free, and they called again. And they hadn't cast they hadn't cast Jack's mother. There were like 3 parts left.
Yeah.
I said, well, okay. It was the last day they were casting. And James Lapine was in there. And so I went in and just did, I don't know, I sang something. And James, they said, come back this afternoon. And honestly, I was not even thinking about it, because I thought, well, I don't know. I just didn't even know enough about. They'd been casting it for months.
Yeah.
And some of the people, I think, had already started learning their parts, because they were cast like weeks and weeks ahead. They could listen to the album and everything. So I came back, and I sit outside in the rehearsal room, and I hear Mary Louise Burke in there reading. Now, I didn't even know who she was. I'd never seen her before. Okay. I heard her reading Jack's mom.
Yeah.
And she made me laugh so much. I was like, she's going to get cast. Why am I here? I mean, seriously, she was so funny. And so they came out. Somebody came out, and they said, would you read The Stepmother? And I said, yeah, I guess. Sure. I mean, I hadn't even thought about it. And so I went in, and Stephen was in there. Mr. S was in there. And he says, this is my favorite thing I think he ever said to me. I don't have to hear her sing. I know what she sounds like. Oh, I love that so much. Thank you. And and then they had me read the stepmother, and they literally said, "Oh, well, okay."
There you go.
And so later that day, or maybe it was the next day, I don't know. I had to go home, and they called and they said, "Oh, they're offering you the part." And I said, "What part?" I mean, I didn't know if it's stepmother or Jack's mother or what. But the deal was you had to do the other part too. We had to cover the other part. That's how they were casting it.
Oh.
It was a deal breaker. You had to, half of us were covering the other half of the cast.
Oh my gosh.
So that was kind of intense. And they were starting like in 2 weeks. And this was in November or December. I mean, seriously, I was like, what? Oh, I don't know. And anyway, so of course I did it. And I hadn't been in a Broadway show since Company.
Wow.
And Vanessa Williams was going to be in it, and she's just great.
Glorious, yeah.
I just loved it. So I hightailed it up to New York. I didn't even have like a recorder or a cell phone. I don't even know. What was this, 2001 at this point?
Yeah, I mean, some of us had cell phones, but it wasn't what it is now. We certainly didn't have social media.
So anyway, long story short, I ended up working like 9 months with them. We went to LA and opened it first out there. And then New York. And I had to leave actually that next fall. My dad, actually, while we were doing it the night before the Tony Awards, my dad died.
Oh my God.
And I found that out during the show. And so many things happening. The Tony Awards were the next day. And it was a pretty intense time. And then while I was in New York, I decided, well, maybe this is the time I should just make a CD, record some songs for my son, just so he'd have something, like a legacy.
Yeah.
And so I did that on my days off. I was pretty tired by then. And then in the fall, he was going into his senior year of high school. So I decided I should go home because he was doing his college search and everything. And I'd been gone then 9 months. And so it was fantastic being with Sondheim again. He really didn't give me too many notes. I remember that. He came to the dressing room, which Mary Louise and me and Melissa Dye shared. We screamed our heads off. We laughed so much. And I did have to go on for a week for Mary Louise, which I wanted to kill her, but she got to have a vacation. But anyway, just
remarkable.
Just so many interesting experiences I had. And
you're talking
I remember. Well, anyway.
You're talking about your son's college certs, and I brought up earlier Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music. Now, if you are in the arts in high school, if you were or college, you're a practitioner or you're a teacher, it's pretty much common knowledge that CCM now and for decades has been one of the premier training programs for musical theater, and you hold a fairly significant title there, and that is what?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Well, I went in as a voice major because we didn't have music theater then. I had never done a musical outside of like an operetta.
Okay.
And been like a lot of choral singing and a lot of choir singing. And my town, along with my dad, we were the wedding singers and the, funeral singer.
Yep.
Choir and all that stuff. So I got accepted, and I think they had in mind to start this because I think that's why they accepted.
Okay.
Because I wasn't your typical opera person, although I could have had a very big, legit voice because, every once in a while, I think it scared people. It surprised people when I would vocalize like that or something. I did one opera, Hansel and Gretel, with the Cincinnati Symphony, actually.
Humperdinck, sure.
And I was a sophomore, and I played the witch. I played several witches in my time.
Sure, they're fun.
Um, but they decided to start this music theater degree. So
With you.
they took me out of Italian. I was taking Italian because opera singers take languages,
Yep.
and put me in ballet. I was really, the first musical I did at school was called Riverwind. Now, and I
Okay.
played a grandma. And after that, I ended up doing Funny Girl and Annie Get Your Gun. And my teacher, my voice teacher, named Helen Laird, is the one who really instigated this program because she knew these two guys who ran New London Barn Players, which
Yeah.
is still an operating
Yep.
theater. It's non-equity, but it was wonderful. And they had known each other in college or something. And she asked them to take me the next summer after my freshman year as an apprentice, which they did. And that's when I really started my repertoire because I was in the chorus. And I ended up doing one lead that summer, and that was How to Succeed. I played Rosemary. And then the next summer, I went back and Stephen Schwartz was playing the piano and doing a lot of things. And he was in the chorus too. And we became really good friends. And he came here to Cincinnati and visited. And it was a lot of fun. And so I got to know him a little bit. And when I was a junior, the next year, they formally decided to instigate the program. So I started taking different courses, like an acting course, which was ridiculous at that point. And but by then, because I was such a mishmash of courses, I had 2 years of things that voice majors have.
Are you taking the acting courses with the acting majors?
Yes. And so I was really stinko at that, to tell you the truth, because
Somehow
there
I
were
doubt it.
only, I was just doing these parts in summer stock and there at the school, but I was learning all these wonderful things vocally. And I don't know. Anyway, I was the first official graduate with a Bachelor of Fine Arts
In musical theater.
Yes, and they called it in musical theater, but they called it concentration in voice.
Okay.
Because they had more of a concentration, I guess, in dance, perhaps.
Okay. All right.
Because the first few people that graduated, those first 2 or 3 years were kind of all had come in to see as different majors.
So interesting.
It is. And Jack Rouse was the first person hired to head up the program. His first year was my senior year, so I didn't really do much with him. And I didn't. The only time I performed was my senior recital I gave in Corbett Auditorium, but every show I did was either in Wilson Auditorium, which has been obliterated, torn down, or on the Showboat Majestic, where I met Leroy Reeves, who came back.
I'm trying to get him on the podcast. Yeah.
Oh, you have to.
He's fabulous.
He's hilarious.
Yeah.
We're really good friends.
I love it.
He he directed, choreographed, and starred in 3 musicals up with me. Oh, God, that was hilarious. And he'd already been on Broadway. He'd been in Sweet Charity. He's 5 years older, so he was 5 years out doing stuff.
Sure.
And his stories are legendary, of course.
Literally legendary.
Actually, I'm going to see him in New York while I'm there and might make a little appearance in his roasting.
Fabulous. I love it. So before I wrap things up, what advice do you have for young, we're talking about training programs and the academia housed within the construct of musical theater, these new up and coming artists who want to study musical theater, what's your advice for them? What do you tell them to do?
I'll tell you the truth. I just, I don't really have a lot of advice because I'm so unfamiliar with how the business really works now. And also, I'm always a little dismayed when I see what they're doing in shows. Um, because there are so many shows where they don't use their full voice.
Yeah.
Now let me explain that. Because I had the very old fashioned way of learning to sing. I have some phlegm right now. That's part of it too. Excuse me. I think a lot of these ladies, especially in their voices, you know, that they do all this frontal singing.
Yeah.
And yes, we do that. But I think they would all be, a lot of them, very amazed at what else they have in there that has a real richness and a bottom to their voices, even when they're sopranos, because there are some wonderful high sopranos out there. But there's a lot of really more, because we never, ever experienced a microphone, first of all.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot more in there that doesn't, you know, that even this accents, it's hard to explain, but I just want to run up on stage once in a while and they're singing great. Some of them are, you know, grasp it more than others, but I do think there's a lot more in some of the voices that they could actually, I mean, all the stuff they're doing, great. They'd still be cast in them.
Sure.
But they have so much more there.
Accessible. Right.
Yes.
I agree.
Accessible. And that's why when I did Most Happy Fella, I remember years and years ago, it was the early 70s, and I was doing a Wolf Trap, and I was playing Cleo.
Of course.
And Anton Coppola, who was a very famous opera conductor, was conducting it. And I was auditioning. I was warming up in my dressing room before the show. And he literally came and knocked on the door. He said, "Is that you?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "I thought someone else was in here. I didn't know you had that legit voice."
Classically trained.
I was hired to do a musical, and I had been in company, and I'd done summer stock, you know, those big theaters and everything, but everybody has it. You just have to know how to access it.
Yeah.
It's kind of, you know, and then you have so much more to work with.
Yeah.
So I don't know about the business anymore. I know what I think when I see a person perform, if they're good, if they speak to me, and if, you know, but.
And that's invaluable.
Same thing for you as a teacher and a director. I'm sure you feel the same way sometimes.
I do. But listen, I have to let you go because thank you, half hour. We're at half hour, but you have so many more stories that I'm dying to hear. So I'd love to get you back on at some point.
Well, we'll have to do a matinee then too.
I would love it.
Night show. We'll have 2 half hours.
That's right. A 2-show day. I love it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your stories with me and with my listeners. Thank you for carving out time and for helping us to all figure out Zoom, which is a hellscape. I'm so grateful.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I hope to see you very soon.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Pamela.
Mwah. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, that's a half hour.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, friend. We'll see you soon. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Boxland Media. Think big.